The Surrey care referendum. These are my feelings. Firstly, I suppose for the last 15, 20 years, it's like watching a small pebble rolling down a hill, getting bigger and bigger and more of a threat. And all the politicians and policymakers and government advisors have stood on the sidelines and watched this pebble continue to roll until it's got so big that it's now a major disaster. None of those people have been held to account for, their negligence in allowing it to get to this point. Now we have a situation where Surrey are asking taxpayers if they should fund social care. Now, obviously, people have to be cared for. That's the #1 priority. But also what needs to be looked at as a result of this referendum is who we're paying for that care. Now, for example, Merrick Park Care Home, where the owners were holidaying on luxury holidays, their children were putting up the expensive gifts they were given on Facebook, and they were earning so much money they couldn't spend it fast enough. That care home was in Surrey, and the residents in that care home were not looked after, and it was closed. However, nobody was held to account for it. Neither were the council officials who'd actually used beds in that care home for publicly funded residents in that borough. That's at the heart of this. Southern Cross is another example. Many people got out of Southern Cross with millions. So it's a helpline, sorry, that's what it's like in here. You can't talk for 2 minutes, I'll ring them back. Southern Cross, for example, the management got out after stripping all the assets from Southern Cross care homes, leaving people neglected and abused with no staff to look after them, and the government and the NHS picked up the bill. It's time we took responsibility for elderly care, because it's not working in the private sector. What Surrey Council need to do is maybe ask a class of 5-year-old primary school children to add up the cost of looking after care, the building, the staff, the food, etc., and add up what the private sector needs to provide that care. The food, the staff, the building, and the profit margin. Now, why are we taxpayers paying for profit margins of private care companies? And when some of those care companies are not providing the care, there's no accountability for that. So we need to re-examine privatisation of care, because that is the real issue here. So yes, we need to look after people, and it's the #1 priority. And at the end of the day, the pebble that rolled down the hill and turned into a boulder is only going to harm the very vulnerable, the people on the receiving end that need that care and are not getting it, and who are not getting it now. That care is not being provided properly in many instances. And we are on the receiving end every day of the calls from people who've lost their loved ones because, nobody provided the care, or they didn't provide the care to the correct standard, or staff that, are working in intolerable conditions without breaks, with not enough staff to care for people. So at the end of the day, we need to look at this. The question is not who is going to pay for it, but who is receiving that money, and what are we getting in return for it, and what control have we got over care in the private sector. Free markets in any other sector, I don't know, but in the care sector it doesn't work. It's too expensive, firstly, and we've got no control about the kind of care that you're getting in return, and it's just more, give me more, and there's no end to it. And as for the Surrey Council, to me, these people are paid to do the job and to manage and to do and make the decisions. And it seems to me that they're just saying, oh, well, we don't want to take responsibility for this because we might lose the next election if we put up the council tax. They need to take responsibility and stop being so self-serving. They need to serve the people in the borough. And that means taking responsibility and not sort of saying, oh, well, you decide because we don't want to lose the next election. That's self-serving beyond words, because at the end of the day it shouldn't be about keeping your position as a councillor. It should be about what's best for the most vulnerable people. So let's start looking at this properly, and let's start looking at these big companies, and let's start asking questions about, for example, how many care homes in Surrey have there been complaints about standards of care? How many care home providers have there been complaints about standards of care? how much profits have these companies made in 15 years, in the last 15 years? Not this year, but for the last 15 years. Merrick Park, I'm not saying every care home has those kind of profits, but at the end of the day, it does blow the argument out of the water that people can have a luxury lifestyle by running care homes. And at the end of the day, the public are paying for this. 90% of care is paid for out of the public purse. Do we, the public, have no say in what kind of care we're getting in return? Well, I think we do, and I think we all need to start asking.